What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Essential Scares podcast, the show where we watch and play our way through horror to determine what is truly essential. I am your host, Corbin, and with me today is Grant.
Hello.
Bobby.
Oh my god.
And Alan.
Good morning.
Today, we're going to be talking about the 2021 version of Candyman, Nia DaCosta's soft reboot / sequel to the 1992 original. But before we get into all of that, Bobby has a spoiler warning.
I do. This will serve as your first one and only spoiler warning for the brand new Candyman sequel / soft reboot. If you don't want any of that spoiled for you, please go to the essential discussion in the timestamp below. Spoiler free. So, I watched this movie 12 hours ago, so I didn't have much time for it. So, I just need to, get this out of the way off the top, right? Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is, a 10 out of 10 hunk, right? Like a 20 out of 10 grade A beefcake, right? Mm-hmm. If you're only listening to the spoiler warning, go to the essential discussion, just go watch the movie for him alone. He's in it a lot. He's shirtless a lot. It's really good. Alan.
So I think our clip for this week is going to have to be right here, and it's just American Psycho Part 2, but we just like hot men again. But I digress.
Hey, here's the thing. Y'all made fun of me, and I said we love hot bods here. And here's the thing. That's right.
He has the beanie.
We're rocking the beanie for Yaya.
Look, you got to just lean into it when you have opportunities. Bobby, I love your commitment to the craft.
Listen, he's a hot guy.
You're not wrong.
He is a hunk. Here's the thing, right? Full spoilers at this point, right? What a wonderful addition to the hot guys playing Candyman canon here, right? Tony Todd, also 10 out of 10 hunk. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, even hotter? Yes, please. That's all. That's it. That's all I got to say to that.
Welcome to the review of Yahya with a side of Candyman.
Listen. Is he a fantastic actor? Yes. Do I know nothing about him besides his acting ability and the fact that he is a stone cold stunner? No. So those are the two things we're going to talk about, and I'd rather get the objectification out of the way first.
Yeah. I think this movie, to actually bring us into the discussion proper and not just on hot bods and men, I think the way this movie is both a sequel but a reboot in a very interesting way. We're going full spoilers. The idea later in the movie where, I guess, Burke, the guy played by, oh my God, his name's escaping me, effectively tells not just the Candyman origin story that we knew from Candyman in the 90s, but the fact that, no, this goes back to, slavery time, not necessarily slavery times, but...
That is the Candyman story from the 90s.
Yeah.
It is?
Slavery
I didn't think...
No, yeah, the original Candyman is the son of a slave. That's the story.
Oh, I totally missed that. I totally missed that from the first. I didn't think that they went that hard.
Did you not watch the movie? This is exactly what they're talking about. Whitewashing history.
Yeah. Well, here we are. I fucked up.
Wow,
I'm as bad as the boyfriend in the beginning who's like, oh, you guys are talking about that thing that affects you. And they're all like, yeah, idiot. We've been talking about it for an hour here.
No. We don't need to go into it right now, but I think the boyfriend character plays a very interesting dynamic in the whole narrative of, obviously the Candyman movies have always been about race.
Yeah.
To a certain extent. There's always been a racial element to it, right? Because, even when it didn't necessarily have to be, it was good that it did. Horror is known for its metaphors, right? Anybody who really likes horrors knows that there's a message to be had in every single horror movie. And this one has always been about racial injustice, right? And like you said, a big part of this is talking about that is a little bit more of, there's some very blatant stuff, right? Gentrification is a very big part of this movie, very much text, right? Going along with Cabrini Green being a big part of this, where now Cabrini Green is gentrified to shit. That place is in River North, which is a very nice part of Chicago. and it, wasn't always that way. We section off places of the city to die, to quote this movie, and then we tell artists to come back, and then we say just stay there with cheap rent for a little longer, and then we'll give you our Whole Foods, right?
I thought it was really cool because harkening back to like the original Candyman episode, I remember that you talked about Cabrini Green and like the gentrification that happened, and then I go into this movie and they're talking about it. I'm just like, hey, I know that because of Bobby. That's awesome.
but I'm glad we all got to learn something today. But I think that I legitimately, like, it's nice to hear that, like, Grant got something from our conversation that brought him into the next movie. Kind of, it's cool. I like that a lot, actually. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, no problem.
But one of the things I want to mention is, like, one of the things that are a little bit more subtextual, I think, is this generational racism, right? That, like, the more things have changed, the more things have stayed the same, right? So, like, every so often, right, there is a new tragedy within a community that is caused specifically by white people, right? And even the death of Cabrini Green as a black community was caused by white people, right? And so there's, like, all of this kind of stuff, right? This racial animosity, and then you have the boyfriend, right? What is her name? What is the
Brianna?
Yeah, Brianna's brother's boyfriend, right? Who
Trey's boyfriend.
Yes. Brianna's brother's boyfriend, yes.
Yeah, Trey is the brother.
Trey, yes, yeah. Trey's boyfriend, thank you. Trey's boyfriend is, like, very supportive, and, like, he is somebody who is very clearly trying, which I think is different than a lot of other white characters are displayed in this movie.
And he is kind of that. His trying angle is definitely mirrored in the opposite direction by the art director. What is his name?
Asshole.
Yeah, that's honestly that guy. That frankly works. Well, exactly. I mean, our first introduction of him is him trying to get art out of an artist, which is that's just not the way that works. And his specific comment of the South Side is overdone, like, that is such an overtly racist thing to say to a black man that grew up in the South Side of Chicago. Yeah. Like, that comment. He said that, and I was like, wow. Just because he then tried to cover it up with what he says after it, like, oh, for artists. Like, come on, man, we knew what you meant there, And
nobody cares about the South Side anymore. That was like the message. Yeah. But, like, he's also, if I'm remembering correctly, the one white dude who has any sort of prominence in this movie who doesn't die.
He dies.
He gets got. He gets, like, ripped up.
No. I'm sorry.
You mean Trey's boyfriend?
Trey's boyfriend.
Yes, Trey's boyfriend is the only one that doesn't die, and which is important, kind of, because everybody that dies is white, right? They make it. They really make a point of that.
In some sort of position of power over the other characters, is something I noticed. You have the art critic, you've got the art dealer. I guess his girlfriend or his intern, I should say. I guess he had power over her in a way, because there's obviously some, like, sexual impropriety there that they very much so hit on, kind of in passing. The new ring.
It's fine.
Honestly, that was a really good line.
Very funny.
What other characters? I'm trying. The police. That's pretty obvious in terms of a power dynamic issue there.
ACAB.
This has been the Essential Scares spot.
On top, so my wife and I watched this movie together, and to skip to the end in terms of the scene.
And I watched with Corbin's wife and Corbin.
When the cops kick open the door and we have Brianna holding Anthony, who has basically become Candyman at that point and is shot, she gasped, and after the movie she's like, that is very much so reminding me of Breonna Taylor. And I was like, well, I mean, I think that's a pretty overt
Well, the entire
kind of
the entire marketing campaign
yes,
is a Breonna Taylor reference, right? I mean,
yeah,
they have really leaned into that, and I
Yeah,
think
say his
that
name. Yeah.
yeah, I think that at times this movie almost. I think one of the weird things about this movie, I'll say it, right, a negative side almost, is that it has a lot to say, but it's a movie that is clearly from a black perspective, right? About a black community. Like that's core to Candyman. I think we even talked about that even with the
in the first one,
92
yeah.
movie, right? Even though the lead was white, like the story is very clearly black, right? And that's important. But I think the difference is that this movie feels like it's directed at white people. The way that they
Yeah.
talk about things, like the text, like
Mhm.
it's almost satirically obvious the way that they talk about things sometimes. And do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I
yeah,
think some of the stuff that maybe we're seeing and some of the things that would like that make us as four white dudes, like, or at least white passing dudes, right? Like quake in our boots a little bit is like the idea of like restorative violence, right?
Mhm.
Like there is this almost at times positive take of Candyman killing white folk and like that being like at the end specifically, right? When he's killing the cops, right? There's like this very like this
yeah,
catharsis about it, right? And there is the and what's his face? The shop the laundromat owner guy,
Burke.
the big bad Burke.
Yeah.
When Burke is like Burke's talking about, well, now we're bringing Candyman back and he's gonna kill the white people, right? There is this weird like it's almost it was the same thing with Black Panther and Killmonger. Like there was like this like there's this bit about it, right? But I think part of the thing that makes it's the same lens that like when you are and I you know I'm not here to speak for black people, that's not what I'm here to do, but like I think that there is a message that might be more directed at black people about the dangers of that the same dangers of that restorative violence, because I don't think any right I don't think that like besides like the critics, like the art critics and things like that, those kids didn't really need to like they were all kind of assholes, but like no one here really needed to die. It wasn't like their sins were so grave that they were doing like and like they're not necessarily they're all the characters in this movie are much more three-dimensional. And like even like the kills, they're like, and especially like you know the girl, like the intern at the beginning, she did not need to die. She was literally a casualty just because of saying the name, right? And so there is this, I think there's this almost mixed message, which I think is important because it's a discussion that like hasn't been fully sussed out yet within any community of like, well, how do we get past the racial injustice in this world? Some people think that like we need to suffer like they suffered, right? Some people think this, that, or the other thing, and it's kind of this kind of like, well, something needs to happen. And if it doesn't happen, and if we don't handle this in an appropriate way, this will be the only recourse. So it's almost like a warning both within and without the black community that I find to be that is not as textual as like the very much like, hey, maybe leave black communities alone or maybe finance them, right? Like there's just like a big textual argument.
Yeah, which like I'm fine with having that message, obviously, right? I think that there are several subtextual messages that this movie does really well, but I think that we're gonna look back on this movie in a different way than we look back on the original because of its textual messaging, because it doesn't feel like this. It just doesn't feel like it's going to be as much of a
touchstone kind of thing, or
yeah, like I don't know. I know what I want to say, but I don't know how I want to say
Well,
it. But like,
well, yeah,
do you know what I
think,
mean?
Yeah, I think part of that is because it's a continuation of a series instead of a new IP. One of the reasons why Candyman is
they did completely change a lot of like the concepts. Like I think that they, you know, the reason why they had to pick a different Candyman, right? The reason why it wasn't Daniel Rubentai, right, for most of the movie is because they wanted to tell that other message, right? And I think that that's totally fine. But I think it's interesting how they change things to adjust the messaging.
Do you think that your criticism kind of comes from it comes from the perspective of, I'm trying to think how I want to phrase this. I think in general, I like to think at least the four of us on this show are at least fairly more knowledgeable to some degree of the issues that this movie is talking about, or at least
we attempt to be socially progressive.
Sure. I think this movie is not targeted at us. Like, I think we can watch this movie, see the messages, understand that. 1 second. I think the target of this movie is the people who don't get that to the same degree. I think us having an idea of it kind of makes it be like, is this... well, I guess what you're saying is like, more so I'm saying to your comment about it being satirical in nature.
Well, I think that's part of the... I think that's actually part of the issue, is that this movie sometimes acts like its message is for, or that it is directed to people that might benefit from that message more obviously. But the franchise, like the movie itself, like that, people that need that message, right, are probably not going to see this movie, right? Like they just aren't, right? And I also
is that really a reason not to do the message then?
I think that it's there is a line of thought, right, that if like it's almost too forward to be for the people you think it's for. While do you know what I mean, Bobby?
Yes, but I don't agree.
Well, I exactly know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
but I think that's only one layer of this movie.
I agree. I don't think that it's a negative, but I don't think it hampers the whole film. I think the movie has other things to say.
But I think Alan's point is important too, because that is very much a textual argument. So like anybody who sees this movie is going to notice some of the very obvious elements. And it's the same thing with like the original Candyman. The original Candyman absolutely has some of those moments that we talked about being subtext absolutely on the nose. Let's not fucking kid ourselves, right? That like there aren't points where they're like, hey, racism, bad, right? Like that's part of the movie, right? Like very clearly part of the movie. And in the same way, right, they're like, hey, gentrification, not cool, right? And like, white people are the ones, and like racism, also bad, right? Like, which is like fine, right? Because there are plenty of people who are not as actively socially progressive, but love themselves a good horror movie, and maybe even remember the cool slasher movies of Candyman. Remember the hook hand guy? I thought that was super cool. I want to go see this movie. And maybe they come out of it being like, oh, you fucking SJWs with your fucking woke skull shit, and they all get pissed off, and the quartering or the quarter pounder or whatever you want to call himself, that fucking asshole on YouTube,
he already has a video about it.
Oh, I bet he does.
Of course he does.
Because he's an idiot who doesn't understand anything. He doesn't understand anything. That's right. I'm punching up to somebody who will never see this. And if he wants to punch down back at me, let's go, baby.
We'll take all the free advertisement.
You believe in nothing. You believe in zero things. You just like making money. Fuck you. Yep. Anyway, like some people will do that, right? Clearly, some people already have.
Yeah.
But the reality is it's a message. Even this very obvious one is a message that's not obvious to everybody. It's a message that still kind of needs to get out there for a lot of people, because gentrification is still happening, right? Even like well-meaning liberals, even well-meaning progressives in this group, right? We're all talking right now. There was stuff in this movie that I'm not sure I even necessarily agree with, but it forced me to reckon with. Right? Like, I am somebody who is very against any sort of restorative justice, right? I am somebody who believes in progress through reform. I believe that, like, if a system doesn't work for you, you make it work for it as best you can, right? And they kind of even make fun of that idea, where, like, it's a small comment where they say, like, change it from within, which I believe is fundamentally possible, because that's how we've gotten every change that we've had, right? But then I have to look in the face of, like, even that subtext of the generational hatred of, like, the more things change, the more things stay the same, right? But then it also talks about maybe that could work, because, like, there are people. There are a group of black people who are doing very successfully. The majority of people who are successful in this movie are black. It's a very black centric movie, right?
Yeah.
And so like there is this like the mixed messaging of it, I think, can come off confusing, but I think really works to the idea of like what can we do besides just try to continue fighting?
Inherently, the idea of how do we fix this problem is a mixed message. Like I think at a base level, it's always going to be that kind of mixed message. So in a way, it makes sense that the movie is in itself a mixed message.
Yeah,
you know?
So that's why I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have the very obvious one on the top, because us for the various conversations that we've had, the various changes that we've made through our lives, and the fact that we very clearly, both publicly and privately, talk about the changes in our political and social ideologies as they come and go, right? We have become just generally progressive people who have our fingers as close to the pulse as four white dudes from the suburbs of Chicago can do, right? Which is not everything, admittedly, right? But we're trying our best. That being said, right, there are plenty of people in our immediate circles who need to hear this message and would probably like this movie, and so and would probably even be receptive to the message.
I think that I wonder if maybe like a lot of my thought is like I wonder if this was the movie for that. Like, is this a franchise that is that wide reaching? Like, or is this a franchise? Is this a movie that maybe should have been more from within and for a specific audience instead of trying to hit as many, like it almost feels like it's trying to hit like, like three different layers, like a couple of different audiences in different ways. Like, was that the right move, or should I have, I mean?
Okay. So let me challenge that, because I think me and Corbett specifically watched this movie 12 hours ago, maybe a little bit more than that. So like this is still very fresh in our mind.
Yeah.
We decided to save all of our conversations for the cast. But so my question is like, was the popcorn bits of this movie still good? Was this still
for sure.
like if you wanted to
for
choose
like a slasher, it's great. It's so easy to watch. Like the violence is almost like sickeningly glossy in a way. Like I think that it's very intentional the way
pretty.
For sure.
Yeah. It really hits home the artist element of like the fact that the killer in both these films is an artist, right? Yeah. There's a weird beauty to it. So like that's my point. Even if you want to actively choose to ignore the political message of this, right? So you either have to like either take it in passively, look for it in a positive way, actively ignore it, or actively get upset by it. And like anybody who like, but like you can still enjoy the bits of this movie that you're choosing to ignore the political message behind, right? Yeah. For the record, side note, maybe I'm a shitty art critic. I really liked the mirror. I really liked that piece. I thought it was really cool.
I think I'm not in art, like in that type of art. I would never pretend to be a critic of that type of art, right?
Yeah.
I definitely understand why they would say like, oh, maybe this is a little trite, because it's like, oh, maybe this is a little on the nose, right? But I think that his art in the beginning is on the nose because it's supposed to be a reflection of the movie, which is a little on the nose sometimes. And it over time, his art becomes much more metaphorical. And I think that his art is supposed to be sort of like the layers of what the movie is trying to go after. Like, I do think that is very intentional,
And speaking of which, I would those like really scary, those really terrifying like headshot portraits.
Those are awesome.
I would throw those up on a wall in my house. No fucking question.
I would be shocked if they don't produce those.
Big prints of them.
Yeah.
Grant, you've been trying to say something for like 5 minutes. Sorry. Hit us up. No, it's all good. I saw him going.
Oh no, it's fine. I wanted to talk about the whole like race thing that we had been talking about. Like
bring it back.
All of the kills in the movie are white people.
Yeah, right.
Besides Burke at the end.
No.
The girl, Burke's sister, is killed as well.
Oh, the sister, right, in the flashback.
Yeah.
But
No.
like,
Yeah, Burke's
You're
sister
forgetting
is
about-
killed in the flashback.
Okay. I didn't. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
okay,
That makes more sense now.
but like all of the kills, it's like
bad.
besides the necessary casualty that is the intern, all of the people were kind of like people that you didn't like they were set up to be these assholes, right? You know, the critic says, don't you think this is a little overplayed by people of your kind? And he goes, excuse me? And she kind of backtracks and go, oh, I mean artists. It's like,
Yep.
no, that's not what you fucking meant.
I think she legitimately did.
But the way that she
think-
says it is meant to make you think that that's not what she meant, which is, I think, the meaning of the scene is that, like, there's like
He's
an element
defensive.
of like he's defensive, right? He's almost like looking for it, right? Because he already thinks that that's where everybody else is thinking. So even though like she might have actually been well-meaning, the movie and her, and him, right, are in a position of like,
Right.
subconsciously maybe that's not quite where.
But
it
I mean,
Well, and
Clive, the art dealer, is a douche, right?
My
That's
note on
very
Clive is he is walking white fragility. That was my note on him as a character.
Even the high school girls are bullying the black girl, and then they die, right? And then, I mean, the cop thing at the end is definitely the cornerstone of this entire thing, where we get to kind of see what goes on, like in the cars. Like this probably happens more than we would like to say that it happens, where they get put into the car and here's the two stories that we're going to tell you. You pick one. Either he was a bad guy and you're free, or you were an accomplice and you go to jail. And like as soon as that made that turn, I kind of sat there and went, oh my God. And then the whole Candyman scene happens, which is my favorite scene in all the movies, the final scene. But like that whole entire scene, like even when he was just laying down doing nothing and you heard the gunshots, I was just like, what the fuck? Like it's
they told you it was
something
coming.
Right. And I mean, I just think that it's like when we back in like the when the protests were happening like prevalently in the BLM movement, right? It was the, hey, we stand with you, but like we can't, we obviously can't say we understand how you feel, right?
Sure.
And this kind of gives us that little peek behind the veil of like what happens that we may not be aware of,
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I think, but like you said, right? They're the like. It's almost like I'm not a fan of very like super like sensitive language. That's just not how I like going about it. But like they talk about like things like microaggressions and like macroaggressions within the police brutality, like within like a system. But even like going back to that the critics comment, right? Like I like the fact that it's like there's a defensiveness to it, because like there is this it is a discussion in legitimately microaggressions, right? Where where she thinks she gets it. She thinks she has some idea from a legitimate ivory tower. They show her apartment, it's all white, the white ivory tower, it's a tower, all that stuff, right? That she can say that I understand why artists are the gentrifiers, but she doesn't understand like who really is, like, right? And she said it's the system, it's the systems of power, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like when you don't understand the systemic racism of how a community gets gentrified, then how the hell are you supposed to like say that it's the artist's fault? It's not even the artist's fault. It's literally the government choosing that this has value now, so we're gonna give work.
And her comment about the artists, right, being the gentrifiers is supposed to tie into the other comment that's made later on, where Burke says they love what we make, but not us, right? Yeah. And I think that is supposed to be like the other side of the artists, right? Where most of the main characters are artists or involved in the art scene, and art is very prevalent in the franchise, right? It's kind of like a huge undertone of Candyman. So I think that you're supposed to be seeing both sides of her comment, and I think they really make sure that you think about it that way.
Yeah. This movie's just really smart.
We've spent a lot of time in that art scene when we first see his exhibit, and I think that's intentional because it's, I wouldn't say one of the best sequences in the movie. I mean, I would say that, yes, I think it is one of the better sequences in the movie, but I think there are some other key things that start in that whole sequence, and like the music, for example. I loved the way the music builds the moments within that scene, especially when we first see Candyman actually commit his first kill. And then a sidebar, I love seeing Old Style in everybody's hands. I'm like, that's a good touch of Chicago. Because the worst version of this movie has everyone holding Miller Lights or Bud Lights. No, fuck that. You're in the north side of Chicago, everybody's got Old Style. The only thing that could have made it better is they have Malort sitting somewhere.
Okay, so I used to live in Chicago. Like, I used to live in the city, and it was very weird seeing places that, like, legitimate, like one of the apartments that me and my producer Mallory were looking when we were looking for our first apartment was the tower that the art critic was in.
Yeah.
So like we were like, I remember being like, I actually went over because I was sitting next to Jill, and I was like, hey, we almost bought an apartment there. Like we almost rented out a place in there.
It was very interesting, like, because I used to work right up where a lot of the movie takes place. So basically every single outdoor Chicago shot, I was like, oh yeah, right there. Like, and
I'm pretty sure that gallery's in Wicker Park, the gallery that they're in.
Right. It's just like, okay, like it helps me a little bit, I think, because, you know, if you're from the area, even though the movie honestly doesn't do a whole lot with the fact that it's from Chicago. The first movie does a lot more with Chicago as a city. This movie like could have taken place anywhere really, but it happened to be in Chicago. But I think that it added a layer for me and probably for all of us because we know the city. And so even though like the movie isn't doing a lot to say it, they show those scenes. It's like, okay, I can that's actually helping me place what they're trying to do here.
It was like my comment in the first one where I'm like, I know this highway because I didn't know the first Candyman was in Chicago. Because that first scene, you see them driving on the highway. I'm like, where?
Yeah.
And then it zooms out. I'm like, oh, shit. So, but I get that. The idea of being able to feel more connection to the movie because you can look at it and go, oh, I know that area. Like, I know the exact area you're referencing. It's nice.
Yep. Yeah, I went with my girlfriend Ashley to watch the movie, and she hasn't seen the original Candyman. Ooh. So the first part of it is she's like, oh my god, this is in Chicago. And I'm like, yeah. And then we start to like, you watch the like replaying of what happened, right? What Helen Lyle, right? That's her name? Yeah. What she went through and like the paper like shadow stuff. And that happened in the first one too, to talk about the original guy too, right? It was the same kind of like storytelling. I thought so. I could be wrong.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think they did paintings.
Yeah.
Like they showed like back like yeah.
But like we're watching like the initial retelling, right, where Helen Lyle's made out to be the bad guy, and in the first half it's like all accurate, and I went, this is exactly what happened in the other movie. And then it gets halfway through, and then the story shifts. I'm like, never mind. And
so
then later on,
spoiled it for her right there.
Well, because she wanted to know. I'm like, are you ever gonna watch the movie? She said, probably not. And I went, okay, cool. And then
that's the wrong answer. She should watch it. It's a great movie.
Yeah. And then the other half of the story comes in where they actually say the right half of like what happened. I go, see, no, it was all right. I get it. It was all about hearsay and folklore.
Well, no, it was all about hiding the fact that it was Candyman.
Yeah, they added like a Nightmare on Elm Street angle, basically. Like they're trying to, which
is very cool.
Right?
I like
they're
that
trying
a lot.
to hide, the supernatural. They're basically pushing their local myth into true myth and not just a daily part of their lives.
That wasn't an addition. They just kind of more cemented it. Because the first one is I think that's one of the reasons why he's going after Helen. Besides the fact that she's a potentially a reincarnation of his lost love, it's also like you have brought doubt to my congregation.
Yeah.
Like you have so.
How do we feel about how Candyman is portrayed and not portrayed? Sorry, how he's like set up, I want to say, in this movie, because I feel like there's definitely a difference between how he is as a character in the original compared to this. Like when you see him on screen.
Okay,
Well,
so
why don't you go first?
Yeah.
Because
Okay,
I want to
yeah.
know exactly where you're going
Yeah,
with this.
elaborate more on what you mean by
I think
that.
I know what he means.
Yeah.
And
So,
I have some thoughts.
in the original one, right, in the 1992 version, it's like he's this overwhelming presence, right? Like, across the parking structure, and his voice is booming, which I missed for a lot of this until the very end. I was just like, come on, where's that voice? I want to hear it. Instead, we just hear the garbling, like, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that.
Mhm.
And in Candyman 2021, I feel like he's more of like a specter or like something of that nature rather than this actual, like, I just didn't feel his presence as much as I did in the 1992 version.
So I have a thought on this, and I think because I hear what you're saying, right? I think the reason why Helen sees Daniel Robitaille, other than anybody else, is because that's the Candyman myth she knows.
Mm-hmm.
She knows that myth. She knows the first one, right? The one that what is Yahya Abdul Mateen's
Anthony
character's
McCoy.
name?
Anthony.
Anthony McCoy. Yeah, Anthony. Anthony knows is the dude from the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So he sees that version of Candyman.
Okay.
Right? Because Candyman is just a living legend, right? And
And that's why at the end, like, Brianna sees Anthony.
Anthony.
Like, that could have been any Candyman, right? Candyman is like a Candyman.
In fact,
they're all
the whole damn hive.
it shows all of them.
He's the whole damn
Oh, that was
hive.
such a cool
I love
scene.
that line.
Oh,
This was
yeah,
the
it was
first
a
movie.
really good line.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And so I think I think that element of it where like the real Candyman is still the ghost, the specter, the revenant of Daniel Robitaille, right? That's
Yeah.
why you see him and then he goes, "Tell everyone."
Right.
Such a good
'Cause he's
ending
like
of that movie.
The true
Yeah.
form.
He's
Yeah.
the first. He's the
Yep.
first, right? But like he appears as the specter of the one that they know the most.
The current scar on
Yeah.
the land
Yeah.
itself. So on top of that, as we get to see Anthony effectively transition into becoming Candyman, Maggie pointed something out. When he's in his mother's apartment and you see his neck starting to have that sore, she's like, "It's a honeycomb."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh,"
you can
'cause
really-
I didn't catch it.
You can really see
I
it
didn't-
when they're cutting his arm off and his whole,
Mhm.
all of his, like, they're burn scars, right, in a honeycomb
Yeah.
pattern.
Yeah. That was one of my wife. She has a degree in theater, so when it comes to catching eyes for those like minute details, she's better than me outright. Which has honestly been really helpful to have her watch a lot of these movies with me, because she points out stuff that my idiot brain just doesn't key into.
Sure.
But that was one of those ones where after she said it, I'm like, oh, yeah. While we're on the topic of his mother's apartment, how did we feel about Anthony being the baby that was stolen from the first movie?
I knew it. Like
Yeah,
I called it.
I didn't.
We
He
called
straight up
it
didn't.
For the movie.
Yeah, the very first trailer, I feel like that was one of the first things we talked about, was like, oh, I bet he's the baby from the first movie. And so I felt like because of that, I felt like I saw it coming because I was expecting that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his name is Anthony.
Exactly.
really
Like,
early on.
It's
And
not
so,
like they
like-
change the name so that the mom can be like, oh, well, your real name is blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
like the name is the same. And he's the right
Mhm.
age.
Yeah.
And like
I
he
just
clearly
honestly
has a lot
did
of
not put it together.
And that baby was
Yeah.
hunky, and so he's a hunky adult now.
yeah, like you can tell from birth if you're going to be a hunk or not. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, go rewatch the first one, hunky baby.
Yeah.
It's just true.
Yeah.
And then of course,
He's a plus 8 male.
I love how they really brought that all the way around by having the actress return that plays his mom.
Yeah.
That
Mhm.
was great.
And she
it's
has
such a small
aged
role, but she
beautifully.
did. Seriously, I actually
Like,
doubted
that's
at first. I was like,
crazy.
was that her? Because that's been 30 years, and yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
she was not aged a day. That's
I
the
do
thing.
love when he starts the like Cabrini Green like project he's working on, and like he's like, I just feel really connected to this, and all of us who know are just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
you do.
you're
Yeah.
kind of connected.
I do think though that even though that the twist wasn't a twist for me, I do think it was a really smart way of making this a sequel, right? So that like
Yeah.
it's still clearly a direct sequel to the original, while being just distanced enough that it can do all of its own things. Like this isn't Helen Lyle 30 years later back from the dead, right? It's, they're kind of connecting it from a side angle, which I think was the right move.
You could do those other lesser can't exist in this universe technically.
For sure.
Right? Like because they are so unrelated to the first one that
there's nothing stopping this from being Candyman 5.
4?
Yeah, 4 or 5, whatever. It doesn't have to, it's not like a Halloween 2018. Like this is not ignoring the other. They just don't talk about them, but they do use his name, which is from the second one. Yeah. Daniel Rubatai. They don't say they never use that in the original. So there are some references.
How did you guys feel about the dinner scene? I felt like there were like parallels between that dinner scene and the dinner scene for the '92 version.
I don't even know. I don't even know if that has the parallels as much as think of other moments around it. The fact that like the dinner scene is the only scene where Brianna actually gets attention for her own self. That is not attention related to Anthony. And so there's a weird, because every other scene it's very much like, oh, you've dealt with the tragedy of your father and now these murders, and that's an interesting story for you that you were just all around this stuff. And you also are working with Anthony, the South Side's greatest up and coming artist, right? Like that's like her whole shtick is like, nobody gives a shit about you and the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Except for this one scene where everybody's like, oh, goo goo gaga over her, and then you find out why later.
Yeah,
she's talked about it as she's talked about it as like being successful, right? Her brother.
It's kind of a parallel to that first scene in an opposite way, where like she's talked about being successful in other areas where she's not necessarily involved in those scenes, and she is very clearly incredibly successful by her own merits, but she seems to be propped up by the fact of a man again. There's that sexism element that's a through line in both movies.
I mean, they even they even make it a point to mention like 2 different times that despite her own talents and success, she wasn't going to get where she did if whatever his face is, Clive, wasn't killed, right? Like her success relied on
the death of a man.
Right, yeah, the removal,
several men actually,
full removal of the thing in her way, that like she wouldn't have been enough.
I do remember us talking, it might have been behind the scenes, about what we wanted the sequel to do, like what themes we wanted it to bring up. And I remember what I at least said was like, I like have sex, because the first one I felt like was sexism was on kind of like the front of the scene, with like Helen Lyle just kind of being underappreciated the entire time, and then with like the like racism sub themes behind. And I feel like this does exactly what I wanted, where it flips the two, right? You kind of have like the sexism sub theme still there, but like the main thing is about race. And I mean, that's what I wanted to have happen with this sequel, if you were going to bring up those themes, to do it this way. And I'm kind of happy that it worked out that way, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was a really interesting. It was a really interesting scene, and I liked it a lot. And again, it talks about it talks about the it's a scene that I disagree with in certain messaging of it, because again, I'm a reformist. I believe in reform. So like as a political ideology, right? I believe that can be solved in that way. Despite me sometimes saying haha funny revolutionary memes, because haha funny, eat billionaires, yummy 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 billionaires, num nums. I think that there is a lot to unpack, and in the same way in the first movie, like that dinner scene, I think is one of those. It's a major moment in that film, right? Because it's a moment where you fully start to realize that Anthony actually is starting to know what's going on. He's starting to connect the dots. So it's a plot point for that, but it's also a plot point of recognizing that like the top subtext is the race, and then the bottom subtext is the sexism, in a way that like they work together really beautifully in that scene, where it's like, yeah, a guy had to die for that, And yeah, you could try to like do your own thing, or you can just kind of follow along and see what happens, right? And it's coming from both a racial and a gender element in a really cool way. Because in the fact that it's a black woman telling another black woman that is also very interesting to me. I don't know. I agree with you.
All the mirror angles that they took, like on everything, were really, really cool.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome, right? Like, even like one of the scenes where like the bee is on the other side of the mirror and he sits there, he's like trying to touch it and he's just like, he can't. I'm just like, oh, this is so cool. And they even talk about like that feeling, right? The feeling that you are being haunted by what's behind the mirror, like what's on the other side of the mirror, like that kind of mindset. And it just like, all the kills, like they find unique ways to bring up the whole like mirroring, and it's really cool.
Yeah, we talked a lot about the cool subtext of this movie, but Grant, you brought up the kills just now, and I think it's time for us to gush about the gore. I know Alan's been waiting for it. I've been waiting to talk about a couple of the kills myself. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, Alan.
What was your let's let Alan go first. What was your favorite kill of the movie?
Favorite kill? So if we actually got to see the art dealer more up close, that might take it. I think, and the same thing could be said, I know they couldn't show Candyman ripping teenagers to pieces for relatively obvious reasons.
They showed more than they showed more than they probably needed to, but
in my head, I was hoping to just see everything with them, frankly, because that is probably the most brutal violence in the movie, even though we don't see it directly. I'm a big fan of throat slits, though. So seeing the intern just get slashed, just done in, is
so unceremoniously too.
Exactly, it's just done, and he's like, "Okay, stop fucking around. Stop.
Is this real?
Stop." Is it?
Yeah.
And then it's just done. You know, I think that's probably my favorite kill, but I don't think it's the best because it is so unceremonious. Yeah. I think
because
the scene with all of our high schoolers.
Oh, it's so cool. Yeah. That was so cool. It was my favorite. You were right there with me, so I was like, oh.
That's so cool. That was just clearly like it was the most.
It's a very good shot. It's a very good way to shoot a horror kill.
Yeah, it's artsy, it's slashy, it's brutal. Like I think that kill evokes everything that this movie is, which is that it is unerringly violent while still being glossy. Like that kill.
I didn't even
like
I didn't realize it was happening initially, because I was just kind of watching. I'm like, they're really staying on this scene, and then like half a second after she gets lifted in the air, I'm like, oh no, he is gonna, and then it's over for her.
Well, that's the thing, is like you think that like nothing is going to happen. You think oh, she didn't
release, baby.
Yeah, you didn't see, she didn't say it because you never see her say it, but all of a sudden, nope. Like
So that was clearly my favorite. I think it was so well done. Yeah,
I agree. This was more. I was expecting everybody to say that, so just for us to talk about that bit for a second for me, it's just so good.
Yeah,
I mean, I have the same kind of thing that Alan has, where like throat slit was really cool, like definitely a cool kill. But I definitely think the critic kill was the coolest, the best. It was.
Okay, so which kill was the scariest though? Because I think there's a difference between the two.
Yeah.
Because like that kill is like, oh fuck, that's dope. Oh, like because like it's so far away that I think some of the fear
it's removed, and I think that's actually how a lot of the movie is. Like, I think that the movie in general is like not very scary, and I think very intentionally so. Things happen in a way to keep you very glued to it without like scaring you away from looking.
Can I say, dare I say, the kills are for the white people to understand the normalization of violence in the media, specifically with black victims, perhaps.
Right. Yeah. I think
something to think about.
You can say that.
The scariest kill for me would be the Clive kill, just because like if I put myself in his shoes, that would be the most terrifying fucking thing in the world.
Yeah, you're hooked by your fucking Achilles tendon.
Yeah. Your tendon dies, you try to get out, you can't because you already locked the doors, right? And then you get pulled off back to where she is, back to the mirror, and then whatever happens, but like
You got to see it from groin to gullet.
the feeling of like being pulled by something,
know
looking
what
back to
happens.
see what is my foot caught on, and it's nothing, would be terrifying. So that would definitely be the scariest for me.
For me, it's either that one or it's the high schoolers because,
Yeah,
and I think
I
part of that
agree,
is
the
because
high
you
schoolers.
don't see what's happening. I mean, your first like people are dying is literally a fountain of blood and a vape drops back because of course she had to go back for her vape. That was honestly that is probably one of the most accurate type of things that a high schooler would do in that exact scenario. Like that, I was like, all right, that checks out. I can my narrative dissonance bell isn't flying off the handle for that one.
Yeah.
But just not seeing what's happening, but hearing, and then you see in the mirror. Like I think that's where the horror element of this movie probably shines through the most is in that whole sequence there.
Yeah, I think
Plus-
that it helps that
Go
you
ahead.
have a point of view in that scene. I think
Yeah.
that
Yes.
makes it scarier, right? I mean, Clive, right? You're watching something unfold, and it's awesome. It's really, really well done. But the high school scene, you have a audience stand-in there that is telling you how to feel, right? I mean, she's scared. They're showing you her emotions. You're getting to see everything from her point of view, so you're not seeing it the way that like a movie would show it. And I think that makes it the scary kill.
No, I
You
agree.
also never
Yeah.
see any of the bodies. Like even though they're definitely dying and he's going through them one by one, you don't really see any of them.
I think you see the legs of one girl, like in the reflection of the mirror.
The
thing.
makeup mirror.
So,
they show you.
Yeah.
So
Cool angle again.
So this is the second movie where they're trying to figure out what they can get away with killing children.
Mhm.
This is like that we've watched within this last year. That's come out within this last year, right? 1776 or 78.
1978.
Yeah. Fear Street, 1978, right? A lot of kids killed just off screen. And this is the same thing where a lot of kids are killed just off screen, but like they show enough gore to make you go,
This
oh,
one
yeah.
works way better for me.
I think 78 works better personally. But I think that the scene is uncomfortable because it lasts longer.
Mhm.
And you're just sitting there in that stall with that poor girl just like trying to make it go away for her because like you don't ever necessarily witness other kids seeing the fucked shit that happens, right? You just see like you're just there with the killer and the kid who dies. Then in this, you're just like this, like covering her, like please no, please
Yeah.
no, like there's I think that element works better. I would agree. Like you get the feeling more, but I think that like if you're like, oh, you're killing children, no, you're not. And maybe it's because 1978 was the first one I saw of this, so I was a little bit more desensitized to it.
I think it's the
At this
age
point?
actually, because the kids in Fear Street were like children,
Kids.
little
Yeah.
kids, whereas the kids in this one were high school age. And I mean, I've seen plenty of slasher movies that are just set in high school. It's all high schoolers that get killed, right? And
But these kids actually look like they were in high school.
they look younger, yeah, because they're not 25. Like these kids actually look like they're 16, 17. And that added to it for sure. But I think that knowing that these were high schoolers made it a little bit less. Like I definitely understand what you're
And
trying to
also
say.
like there's a joke that leads into this scene, and it's a joke that was on the trailers for it, where like Troy says to Brianna, "My only thing that I have to say is don't summon Candyman," and she looks at him and goes, "Who would do that?" And then it switches to a scene of white people, and I went, "Yep."
Did you notice the one non-white person's the one
I
who
was
leaves?
gonna
Yeah.
bring that up. She's just like, nope, I'm out. Fuck that.
There's a weird thing with Jordan Peele when it comes to and I don't know if this was a Jordan Peele thing or if this was not.
he
what's her name?
was co-writer
that's
and
right.
producer, so
but
could have been.
specifically with Jordan Peele, I've noticed a couple, at least in Get Out, and I think even Us. I don't remember this specifically because I could be wrong. There is a thing with him and discussing like the whole like model minority thing with Asian people.
Mhm.
I said that in quotations. That's stupid. It's something that white people believe, but we're all human beings. Just gotta clarify that for the audio listeners. because that was, but like, and I don't know because it happens so quickly, but like, it's almost like she's smart enough not to know to fuck with these things, but she's also kind of fucking mean to the black girl. So it's like you're not. It's almost like she doesn't fit in either world in that way, which is like, it's a small thing, but like I just wanted to mention it because he definitely does it in Get Out.
I don't, like, from what I remember, there's nothing like that in Us. I don't think that there's any Asian characters.
Us is
in
very
Us
different
at all,
compared to Get Out.
Yeah, well, but there's the guy, there's the Asian
so is
guy
this,
in Get
but
Out.
they still did it.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the Jordan Peele parts of this movie, I have to say, I think this is, and it makes sense for it to be this way. It's not his direction. This is the least Jordan Peele movie that Jordan Peele has been involved in, at least from what I remember of Us.
Have you ever seen Keanu?
Yeah.
No.
It's the comedy movie he did with Keegan-Michael Key.
Yeah.
Oh no, I haven't.
It's actually very funny.
It's like, it has very funny moments, but I don't know if I would recommend it.
But I guess my point with that is watching this movie, very good, very much so enjoyed it. But if I didn't know Jordan Peele was involved, I don't know that I would have. I don't. If I didn't know, if I found out he was involved after the fact, I don't think I would have been like, oh, I can point to these specific things. I mean, there's an air of that because there's definitely some comedy through this movie, absolutely. But I don't know that it is it's different. It's not. He didn't direct it. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say? It's hard to elaborate exactly.
I think oftentimes, and even to my own detriment here, I think that Jordan Peele has become synonymous with specifically black horror. And so there is a certain level where people are, one, trying to emulate that, and two, everybody is just assuming anything that is about black people and is a horror movie, they go, oh, Jordan Peele did this. So like,
and
what
he is involved.
Like,
I mean, he is, producing or executive producing a lot of black horror right now. He just is. And like, so there, like you said, chicken and the egg, right? Like there is sort of this, like, he's almost doing that to himself, which is fine. Clearly he's looking to do that. And I think it's good that he's using his clout, right, as a now high ranking, Hollywood person. Yeah. To help other creators get up there.
Because he has turned black horror into the mainstream. There's two directors in horror right now who are mainstream directors or producers. Jordan Peele and James Wan. I like one of them.
You're a big James Wan guy, right?
Can't forget
huge James Wan guy.
Can't forget Blum though, my guy.
I can and I did.
I will say I am very interested in seeing what Nina does after this, though, because I
do you want to know what she's doing after this? I'll tell you.
Yes,
Captain Marvel 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She'll do good on that.
And you might not have realized, but the actress who plays Brianna is the same actress that played what's her face? She was in WandaVision.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
And I'm now that I know that she's starring in Captain Marvel 2.
Right.
I'm very excited.
The Marvels is the name of the movie. It'll be Brie Larson and then her character. I don't know why I keep blanking on the character's name, but
because she was really important in WandaVision, but wasn't the main character.
Yeah. So Nia DaCosta will be directing her again in the Marvels. And this Candyman was only her second movie, and I think that actually leads a little bit into what Alan was saying, where sometimes it can be hard to parse like what maybe is her style and what is coming from like the Jordan Peele like co-write. And he is a producer, not executive producer, so he was involved in actively involved in the movie.
And he was co-writer too. So I mean, he's definitely much more like he's in there.
I don't believe Nia DaCosta's first movie was a horror film, and so it might be a while before we see her do another horror film with or without Jordan Peele. So it might be a minute before we see like what is wholly her voice without the co-write.
Right. Yeah.
Corbin, I think right now.
I wanted to ask one more thing. I wanted to.
Yes, but Grant.
Oh, I wanted to talk about the final scene more because it's just so good. Like, the last scene that gave me the kind of chills that this scene did was Endgame,
with everybody showing up. That was the last scene that I've seen in theaters. I was just like, the chills down my spine. I was like, oh, this is so cool. This final scene where, like, specifically where as he's walking around the police SUV, you see the different Candymans through each window. I was just like, oh my God, that's awesome. Because they talk about it being a hive. You never really get to see the hive until that scene, right? Or the portraits. I guess you can also see the hive as well there.
For sure.
But that happening, then finally seeing Tony Todd after so long being the final thing that she sees. And then just the when looking at a situation where this character, Brianna, is put between the cops or summoning the demon she said she would never summon, she was more scared of the cops than the demon, definitely has another kind of like tonal thing that you're just kind of like, oh shit. But just that entire scene was so well done.
For sure.
And I wanted to make sure I talked about it and gushed about it, because that's what I left this like theater doing with Ashley. I was like, oh my God, that scene, it was great. It was perfect. It was awesome. It was a cinematic masterpiece. And I still think that it was. It was so good.
We, in Franchise Dissection, which you should watch,
It's
goes
very
up
good.
on Fridays. We talk a lot about the climaxes of movies. At least that's how I've kind of directed the show, because I think they're very important. And I think to hit on what Grant's saying here, the climax is very good. I mean, effectively from Anthony becoming Candyman through the end of the movie, it's got its hooks in you and you're not going anywhere. I don't care if you've had to piss for 4 hours straight. You're stuck in that seat and you ain't moving. Because
Is this a personal experience?
No, I've been a lot better recently with horror movies and going to the bathroom before them. That's neither here nor there.
In a world full of kill padding using copstick pad kills, this was a scene where it did not feel like killing the police was a pad. It felt like there was a point to killing the cops.
Yes.
Slight side note: the first movie that Nia DaCosta directed was called Little Woods, and it sounds cool as hell.
Is it a
It's
horror
the
film?
modern western about two sisters who work outside the law to better their lives. It stars Tessa Thompson.
Oh, okay.
That sounds cool as hell. Doesn't sound like a horror movie at all, but it sounds cool as hell, and I'll probably watch it. Anyway, back to the main point. I just had to sidebar there. I think that like that's super cool. That the fact that like they don't because that happens a lot in horror movies. Like, we have to call the police, and the police get absolutely fucking murdered. But like making them
Send
focal
more
point.
brains.
Yeah, yeah. That's yeah. Like again, fucking not to shit on Lights Out again, but to shit on Lights Out again. Fucking that was a super fucking dumb part of that movie where it's like there's two police officers for no reason and they're dead. Like
It was the only
You don't
one.
need to see him
cops?
die.
More like two corpses.
Look, they had to kill some people.
We don't need to rehash that movie, all right? I don't want to go into it.
Oh,
What a great
but
movie.
what we probably should hash the
The rating.
score. The score for this
Oh,
movie.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Oh boy.
Grant, sling the hash. What's
All
the score?
right.
Pack the hash.
So, I am in between giving this movie a 4 and a 4.5. I think that it was a terrific movie. There are some things that did like kind of bother me about it, and we kind of discussed them here. Just like I felt like the midsection of the movie, although it is like the transformation of Anthony into this creature, was a little long. Like I felt like it lost me a little bit there. But that could just be a personal thing. Not hearing the booming Candyman voice that I wanted to hear was also kind of a bummer, because like that was, I think, something that I gushed about in the original review, was just like how cool that sounded. But besides that, there's not really anything in the core of it that makes me go, oh, I didn't like this movie. So besides those two personal blunders, I think I do have to give it a 4.5 out of 5. I think that it was fantastic. I think that it all comes to that final conclusion, that final scene, as I just said. Ooh, so good. And I definitely would give it a 4.5 out of 5 for sure.
I'll take the next watch. I had a very similar discussion with myself,
You talk to
with
yourself
this
frequently?
and I do. With this movie and American Psycho, where after I finished American Psycho, I was driving home from disc golf before we were going to record the show, and I was like, what did I not like about that movie? And I'm like, nothing. Okay, so it's a 5 out of 5. Same kind of thought process happened to me with this movie. I don't have enough criticisms of this movie to warrant taking anything away from it. I think this movie is brilliant in many of its messaging, mixed or not. I think in terms of just being a horror film in general, it's a compared to some of the other contemporary horror movies we've been watching. This sets a bar for example, Malignant's coming up right around the corner. It's going to be impossible not to look at Candyman versus Malignant in terms of as a horror film because they're so close to each other. I think this is setting a bar that I'm expecting for more current horror that needs to be hit for me to go, yes, this is a 5 out of 5 for other movies, for example. So for me, it's 5. I can't find enough wrong with it to take anything away.
Bobby, you want to go? You want me to go? You need another minute?
No. This is really hard because, like, I feel like I want to give it a 5, but I also feel like that if I sit with it longer, I'm gonna feel like I shouldn't have given this movie a 5. But very much like what Alan said is, I really like this movie a lot. And I don't really have a lot of flaws. I like this movie as much as I liked the first one. A lot of people saying online are saying that I shouldn't, but I did. I found it to be very, very cool, very, very fun. The messaging was really good. Like, I liked it a lot, and so I think I have to give it a 5. I would like to reserve my ability to, at a later date, next episodes or so, early on during this bit, reserve my judgment to be able to change that review. Because again, I am very fresh off this movie and I have a lot of very positive feelings, but like if I sit with it for longer, it might be like, nah, I don't know about that. It takes me a minute. That's why I like to typically do these earlier in the week when we can. But there was no opportunity to.
I know.
So
next
5
time,
out of 5.
Send us a screener, movie production houses.
Yeah, that'd be super cool. I'd really appreciate that a whole bunch. All 35 of our active audience would also appreciate that. Come on, guys, that's asses and seats.
Yep.
But yeah, 5 out of 5 for now.
Okay. So I feel similarly to you in the way that, like, I think that over time, I predicting the way that, like, based on how I feel about the movie now, I feel like 6 months from now, I might look back on this movie a little bit softer. Right now, I did like it a lot, right? I think that I've seen some complaints that, like, that the movie is a little too shiny or that it, like, flows too smoothly, like, through the violence. I think that stuff like that, I think, is very intentional. I actually really, really liked that. But it was the first thing that I mentioned, and I stand by it a little bit. The mixed messaging, I'm not always there for. I liked a lot of it, but it can be a little confusing. And I think that the third act is a little fast. This movie probably could have been like 10 minutes longer and really benefited from that. But it was very good, right? I mean, it's well directed, it's well written, well acted. I'm gonna give it right now. My heart says 4 out of 5.
I thought I was going to be the only one to give it not 5, but I was going to be really sad.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you exactly why because I really loved it, but something. I think I'm just feeling a 4, and I think that when I look back on this, I'll agree with that score. 4 out of 5.
Okay, that's what I was about to ask you.
I think that's a fair score than what I'm giving right now, but I can't help myself but be hyped.
No, and I get, like, if I think about just how do I feel about the movie right now, like, I loved it. I'll absolutely recommend it. Yeah, like, if somebody just asked me on the street, I'd probably be like, 5 out of 5, see it right now, right? Like, but I
And what
think it's a 4 out of 5.
what I was alluding to with like the what we talked about during was your comment about the like the messaging definitely tempered like my like I went, you know what, I really do see that, so it kind of changed my look. I was probably still gonna give it a 4.5, but I'm glad that I stuck with it because like I came out of that theater like this was a 4.5 out of 5. Not
Yeah, see, there you go.
perfect, but like yeah.
Sometimes you got to go with your gut on that very first thought. Sometimes that's
I don't
the
think
right way.
I don't think 5 out of 5 means perfect.
I
to me,
definitely
that-
don't think 5 out of 5 means perfect.
To me, any like maximum score out of the maximum score to me is not a perfect anything. It's just I can forgive enough of the faults of this movie to such a degree, but I can't say that it is worse for those faults. That's kind of what I think through when I say a perfect score, quote unquote.
He's Dave Meltzering it.
Yep.
I
Soon
don't
we're
have
gonna
that
run.
reference.
Dave Meltzer is the most widely respected wrestling critic of all time. He would give Meltzer ratings were super important, so it'd be stars out of 5. And for a long time, it was only 5 stars. And then Kenny Omega, the greatest wrestler, came out on, besides CM Punk, came out on the scene and did like 6 and 7 star matches that he gave 6 and 7 stars to. And so like, and all of a sudden it's like, now it sounds like we're going to start Dave Meltzering things, or we'll 5-star things every so often, but eventually a movie's going to come out and be like, this is a 7-star, this is a 7 spoops movie.
7 out of
It's the
5, baby.
spookiest. 7 out of 5. Yeah.
Perfect 7 out of 5.
Yeah, maybe one day.
Yeah.
Um,
But speaking of things,
absolutely.
is this movie essential, guys?
No spoilers.
Yeah,
no
I'll take
spoilers.
I'll go first here.
Okay.
Yes, go watch this movie today. This is going to come out on August the 30th. I don't care what you're doing. Go see this movie. Just period. You should also probably it would be best served to have watched the first one. Frankly,
I don't think you should have already watched because you've already listened to older episodes of this podcast.
I don't think you need to watch it. I think you will be better served as an audience member having seen the first before watching this one.
Okay.
This is a good horror movie. This is a movie that has messaging, mixed or not. It has a message that it's trying to deliver to you, the audience. I think it's very contemporary, and this movie deserves your money, frankly, and deserves to be seen. It's very, very good.
I agree with Alan and everything that he's saying. I do think that this movie is essential. I think that, like he said, as like a contemporary horror, it's definitely like gonna be compared to. And if you're gonna compare it to everything, then it had to have been essential, right?
Setting the bar.
Oh.
It's setting the bar higher.
Yeah. And I just think it was a great movie. And like Alan said, the messaging is definitely awesome. So.
Bobby, you want to give it to him first?
Stinky. Poopy. No, this movie is not essential. It's fantastic. You should watch it. It does what it is supposed to do, which is to modernize a theme and bring a character into the 21st century, especially into modern times. What it doesn't do is anything new. It is a continuation of the same Candyman story, and it brings a more focused lens to the same message that Candyman 1992 did. It just doesn't. It's very, very, very good. I loved it a lot. For those of us who didn't watch the spoiler cast, I gave it a 5 out of 5. I really like this movie a lot. You should go see it. But is this movie going to be an essential part of horror canon? No. I'm sorry, it just isn't. Will people forget about it? No, because it's part of a horror franchise. So but it is not the essential part of that horror franchise. Very rarely remakes or later sequels are. Because they lose their luster. Even though this movie is good and will probably spawn off 3, 4, 5, 10, 12 more sequels, and it should, it's just not an essential flick. It's really good. There's some really cool kills. There's some really cool moments. It's It's just more of, it is a really well done sequel to a movie that did it first. And did it first and popularized it first, which is what you can't be essential after that if you're doing the same thing. For me.
Well, you can.
I disagree so hard with that
For
idea.
me.
I feel like it can be
gentlemen, opinions, please. Y'all are wrong, objectively right all the time. Boom.
Opinions, and then I tell you you're objectively wrong. Bobby
Everybody
Dunlap, everybody. Bobby Dunlap, everybody.
Everybody has an opinion except for Bobby, who has the truth. I think that we've set that stage multiple times over the last, dozen episodes. Facts are facts, and facts don't care about your feelings. Anyway.
I'm the Ben Shapiro of horror, but I'm right all the time.
Yeah, you said that already. You're the Ben Shapiro of horror.
No!
Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and break Alan's heart here, too. I don't think so.
I hate you.
And, so I gave this movie a 4 out of 5, right? And I've given plenty of movies 4 out of 5s, and I think it stands alongside those, right? I believe I gave the original Candyman a 5 out of 5, and I do think that it's that much better, right? The first Candyman is absolutely essential. It's smart, it's interesting, it has a lot to say. And I agree wholeheartedly with Bobby that this movie is a refinement of the first movie. And I think that that's great. I think that you should see this movie. And I think that if you're the theater going type, go and see it. It's a great theater experience. Our theater was pretty full and everybody seemed to enjoy it.
As full as you are during this time in our lives. Yeah.
Yeah. But that said, if you asked me which one you should watch, I'm just never going to recommend this one over the original, right? The original is the one still, right? And even then, this one serves as a good sequel, but there just isn't enough new for me. I don't want to just regurgitate everything that Bobby's saying, but I agree exactly with what he's saying.
I want to drop something that you said that is not necessarily my feeling, but I feel like you would say, is the original Candyman bleeds its own unique style.
Mm-hmm.
And with this one, you mentioned the polish a lot. There's some of that style lost in the polishing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I feel like you would.
That.
Yeah.
You're right, I do agree.
I guess my core disagreement with you guys is I don't think that just because it is doing the same thing does not mean, to me, that's not something that's going to bar something from being essential. I just don't look at it in that way. I think that for a modern audience, this is going to be a more digestible movie, just in a general sense. And I think that even if it is saying a relatively similar or the same message, really, I think it can still stand its own ground in our current time.
So I hear you. I hear you on that. And I'm not saying that a movie that is or has the potential to be essential does not necessarily can't retread over familiar concepts, right? I said Fear Street, the entire Fear Street series was essential viewing, right?
Yeah, that's very similar.
That's all retreading familiar ground, right? But it's also new. It's new concepts.
Yeah,
this
is
a literal sequel.
I'll do a direct comparison for Bobby, and I'm sure he would agree with me, right? This movie is very similar in ways to what Halloween 2018 tried to do.
Yes.
I would say that Halloween, spoilers if we ever do that movie, Halloween 2018 is essential, right? It just is. I think that it's an essential sequel to that. I think it does some cool new things. But Bobby's looking at me like I'm crazy. You wouldn't say that?
No, for the same reasons why I wouldn't say this is. I think I love Halloween 2018. Yeah. Halloween 2018 has legitimately some of my favorite kill sequences in all of cinema. I don't think that it's essential for the same reasons that I don't think that that this is essential, because it still is retreading in water.
I think that one it has done more for the genre than this one will, because that one kind of like kickstarted a new era of slasher films.
Slasher?
I don't think that this movie is going to do something like that.
We don't know. That's the problem with this kind of stuff.
I'm predicting.
We can look back on 2018 and be like,
so
it's
I can
essential.
understand your thoughts on Halloween because this wouldn't have existed without Halloween 2018.
Right.
I see what you're saying with that. Where everyone's like, oh shit, like if we just do good sequels that like just is like, then we can just do that.
Right.
Which is like that's
Crazy
fair
concept.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
like that's
like-
why like I think like culturally that one ends up being, from like a horror history perspective. I don't know that.
Oh,
this
so you're saying this doesn't even have that element to it because it's in response to Halloween 2018 in that way.
right.
I guess I can see what you're saying. I don't know. That would be something I'd have to bit more, and we're
Mhm.
kind of going, because this movie was also just so good too.
It's incredible.
I-
No
It
one's
doesn't
debating
feel
that,
good
right?
saying- yeah.
Candyman
I don't-
21 is
yeah.
very good.
Yeah, I don't think it does not feel good saying it's unessential, but like I came out of this movie being like, yeah, but like you could just watch the original and get like a little bit more of a, you could get roughly the same message, and then you'll go watch this movie and you'll be like, damn, this is really good. Like, but it doesn't, but like Tony Todd as the Candyman is so much a part of the cultural zeitgeist of horror that like, it's weird not thinking about him and Candyman. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
and
I think that
no
that
spoiler either.
angle too, like you're almost thinking about that too much watching this one if you've seen the
Yeah.
original.
So Bobby, we've been talking about Star Trek,
We have been.
So like, what are your handles? Shout us out.
Oh man, I got Star Trek. What happened there?
I've been trying for weeks to be able to do that, by the way, and I saw the opportunity, and I was not gonna fucking miss it this
Hell
week.
yeah, brother. Hell yeah. So the best way to find me is through my Twitch, is twitch.tv/theredweenie. You can find all of my relevant socials there. It's just Corbin will probably put in the video at the Red Weenie. You won't find me in most of those things that way. Go to my twitch.tv to find me. My socials are typically just my first name or my first and last name with the 16 behind it. Because that,
I wonder how old you were when you made that social.
12.
you're wrong in thinking that's why the number is what it is. I'll tell you.
It's because he was born in 2016, guys. Come on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Lately, I have been. What have I been doing? Whole bunch of not much, working a lot. 40K stuff. Oh, I recently got back into Splatoon 2, which is a really fun third-person Nintendo game. It's very fun. That's about it.
Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Grant.
You can find me at everything at GFooty, GFOOTEY, all capitalized. And I've been playing a lot of Valorant. Riot's new tactical shooter. Along with that, SWTOR is still part of my life. Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Nice.
And then
SWTOR.
the final thing is I've actually been playing Destiny because the new season came out. So obviously I gotta get back up there. I was already at 1320, so like it's just the pinnacle grind over again. But unlimited ammo is cool.
Excuse me. What?
Unlimited
Yes,
ammo on
unlimited
primaries.
primary ammo now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's not fun to run out of ammo. Genuinely, that's a very smart change in that game. No one likes to be like, I literally can't engage with the game.
They even give you the sympathy ammo when you do. They're just like, hold up a little bit, and then we'll give you a little bit of everything, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
That actually sounds great.
You can find me at a seal punter just about anywhere. You can also find me every other Friday on Franchise Dissection. It's a fun time. You should come check out the show.
What are you guys dissecting?
Friday the 13th.
What?
Everyone was done talking about it. We're going to continue for 5 months,
Hey.
guys.
Hey, those movies are bad. Do you talk about how bad those movies are?
No,
Oh.
not yet. We're not to the bad ones yet.
It's okay. The episode I'll be on that we discussed before this episode, I'll tell you how bad this entire series.
Bobby's gonna show up on number 5 and just reach back and be like, "Well, while I'm here, first
While I'm
floor."
here,
By the way,
this movie sucks. That movie sucks.
One, okay. 2, what the fuck is that about? 3D? 3D? Seriously? 4? They said there was going to be the last one. What's that about?
You're not wrong. I really haven't been doing much except watching horror movies because of, well, franchise dissection. Been watching a lot of Friday the 13th. I haven't had time to play games. Psychonauts 2 came out.
Oh my God,
I've been dying to play it, but I haven't had a chance. Also, Ghost of Tsushima had its expansion. Ghost of Tsushima is probably one of my favorite games from is that this year?
That
Or last year. No, it was 2020.
2019.
Yeah, one of my favorite games of last year. It was phenomenal. But yeah, I really have not done much. It's been just watching movies and whatnot. I've been traveling a lot the past couple of weekends, so haven't been able to really sit down and play video games. And I'm not going to be able to do it much this weekend because I got to edit this show in like a day.
Nice. Well, you can find me anywhere at Corbangarang. If you're watching the video, it's right here. It's been there the whole time. You already know where to find me. Off air, besides 40K, like Bobby mentioned, we're huge into 40K right now. I have been watching a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I mentioned it last week, and I have stuck to it, an episode every day. And it has been, so far, I'm like 7 or 8 episodes in, and there's been ups and downs already. But it's fun. It's kind of interesting seeing the beginning of the Whedon style of writing before he was unhinged. And then I've been playing Aliens Fireteam Elite, which is pretty cool. I like it a lot. I'm a big Aliens fan, and for $40, it's hard not to recommend that game. It's not perfect, but if you're a fan of the franchise, it hits a lot of the notes of what you're probably looking for. And though I haven't played the full version of Back 4 Blood yet, obviously, it's a much better Horde game than that is. So if you're looking for a new Horde game, I think Aliens is the one. But yeah, that's about it. You can find the podcast anywhere at Essential Scares. We're super active on Twitter, and by we, I mean me. And then we're quite active on Instagram as well, which is hosted by Mallory, who you may remember from the American Psycho episode. Hit us up. Let's chat. Join our Discord. Join our Facebook group, right? We would love to talk to you sometime. But that's the show. Thank you, everybody, for being on this week. Thank you, everybody, for watching or for listening. Next week, we're going to talk about Lake Mungo, which was my pick, and I cannot wait to watch it again. I've been... Oh, my God.